Welcome to episode 19 of the Today I'm Sober podcast with your host, Liz W. Today the show is about silence, which is quite ironic considering this is a podcast and it's all about the sound. But it's about the power of silence and how connecting with yourself through meditation can give you a spiritual awakening, or as Sally Brockway, today's guest, calls it, a love bomb experience. Enjoy the show. I'll see you on the other side. On the show, we've had several women come on and talk about this inner critic, this really nasty bully that's inside of us that tells us horrible things, and they've given us some tactics to overcome them. Today I'm delighted to have Sally Brockway on the show. Now, Sally is the founder of WOWl PR, and she has a phenomenal WOWl PR school. So for any of you that run your own businesses, please do check her out. It's phenomenal. I'm actually a member and I love it. Sally is just phenomenal at PR. But she's not here to talk about PR today. Sally, today we're having a chat about how you've overcome that horrible, nasty self-critic that was inside of you and the journey that you've taken in 2019 to get you to the point where you are today. So Sally, welcome to the show.
Hello, thank you very much.
So take us back to that moment when you recognised that you had a self-critic, that you were effectively being bullied.
I think it was actually in the end of 2018. Now, I've been a journalist all my life. That's my passion, and it's who I am. And you probably noticed that people don't read so many newspapers and magazines now. Everything's online. And when it's online, it's called content as opposed to copy. And content is free, whereas copy was always paid for. So I found myself in a situation where my livelihood was dwindling. The work that I loved was disappearing. And that was my identity. It was who I was. So I suddenly thought, my goodness, if I'm not a journalist, what am I? What am I going to do? And of course, there was a voice in my head saying, you're too old now. No one will give you a job. You're not good for anything. Blah, 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 blah. You're too old to be a journalist. You're too old to do anything. You don't know that. You've never worked for a corporate. You've only ever done freelance journalism, etc., etc., etc. I got to a point where I said to my sister, I'm going to become a cleaner. Now, there is nothing wrong with being a cleaner whatsoever. But the thing is, I thought I was becoming a cleaner because it was all I was worth. I wasn't good for anything else. I was going to become a cleaner. I'd worked it all out. And if I worked, 24 hours a day, I might be able to afford to live as a cleaner. So that's where I was thinking, I'm hopeless. I've got to the age of 52. My career's all washed up. What am I going to do? I'm going to be a cleaner because I'm not good enough for anything else. So that's where I was. I was pretty low. And my sister said to me, this is crazy. You've got so many skills and talents. And I'm like, yeah, but no one wants them. They're out of date. They're old fashioned like me, etc., etc. And the voice piped up again. So she gave me a book. And that book was called The Journey, and it's by Brandon Bays. She's a Californian sort of healing type of person, the sort of person that I don't normally take seriously. She had a cancerous tumour, which she cured, but with the power of her own mind, by actually going into her own psyche and seeing that she had all these patterns of behaviour that were laid down in childhood that was stopping her from achieving or being who she was or being that inner critic. So I thought, maybe if I explore my psyche, that little voice in my head will shut up. Hopefully. And then I found someone locally who did the journey process. So I signed up. It was 1,200 quid, and I thought, that's quite expensive. But actually, if I can get to the bottom of this terrible bully in my head, which frankly I can't live with for the rest of my life because it's doing my head in, I have to do something. So I'm going to try this process. It's all I can think of. I've done psychotherapy, I've had business coaches, I've had life coaches, I've done the lot. But I still have this voice in my head. So I thought, right, I'm going to try this thing. It sounds mental, it sounds completely out there, but I'm going to do it. I did the journey. to be honest, it was really difficult, because what it involved was looking at feelings that I'd buried years ago and that I'd kept down with chocolate, with shopping, with Netflix, with sex, with anything but feel them. And the process of doing the journey was, you know, let's look at your psyche. What is really here? And it was like getting the bucket and stirring up all this shit. And I felt terrible for months. I was anxious, I was sad, I was angry, I was everything. And I thought, this is awful. But the woman I'd done the journey process with, she had a sort of inner light. She loved her life, she loved her husband, she loved her job. She was quite sickening. And I thought, I want a bit of that. I want to be that woman. I want to be that woman who loves getting up in the morning for her work and who just knows that money's going to come and that everything's going to work out. I mean, she was a little bit too sort of gleeful in my mind, but I thought, I want a slice of that. So I said to her, I want to be like you. So I went to a few of her meditation groups and I met other women who were a little bit like her. And I thought, oh, they've all got this secret. I want to be in on this secret. So I signed up for a year-long spiritual mentorship course. It cost $3,500. So I'm throwing money at this voice now. I'm thinking, this voice is now costing me what? This is nearly $5,000 I've spent on trying to shut this voice up. This had better work. I embarked on this year-long spiritual mentoring group there were 5 of us, thinking it'll be lovely, it'll be all rainbows and unicorns, and yeah, it's going to be great, joss sticks, I'll be in a caftan, it's going to be fab. Again, there was more shit coming up in the bucket, and I thought, I don't really like this. By about April, I was ready to give up. I just thought, no, I've had enough. And Marion, the spiritual mentor, said, stick with it, because this is normal. She said, I felt like this too. And I thought, what, you felt like this? You with the perfect life, you felt like shit. She said, no, I really did feel like shit. She said, I felt even shitter than you feel. I'm like, really? She said, yes, I was divorced. I was a single mother. I had no money. I was fearful. And I thought, wow, if you can go from that to being this person who is just so at one with life, maybe I can. So I persevered. And I discovered, funny enough, I am a talkative person that never shuts up. As you probably realise, Liz, you haven't got a word in edgeways. But I discovered that I absolutely loved silence, and that being on my own in silence was just blissful. And the first time I did it for 6 hours, it was like, I always say to people, it was like discovering my inner Prozac. It was like I'd taken something. I was very calm. I felt sort of this lovely sort of warm feeling of love inside me. There was no anxiety. I thought, oh, wow, that's brilliant. I want a bit more of that. So I did more silence, and I kept trying to meditate, but was hating meditation because my mum would go, yabba, 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 yabba. Oh, yes, but you can't meditate. What are you going to do about this? How many calories are in that cheese sandwich you ate? And my mind just goes off on one. It's mental. It's like bedlam in my head. So I said to Marion, I can't meditate. I'm rubbish at it. And she's like, well, you can't be rubbish at meditating. It's impossible. And I said, well, I am. Well, she said, well, you're not, because if you meditate and don't expect anything from it and there is no pass and fail, you cannot fail. So I didn't really get what she was talking about. I continued with this process of delving into my psyche, meditating and sitting in silence, thinking nothing is happening. I've spent $5,000 and I'm still bonkers. And Marion said, do you know, you think nothing's happening, but it's all happening. It's like a seed. You put it in the earth and it germinates and loads of stuff happens, but you can't see it until it bursts through the soil. And she said, this is what your spiritual growth is like. This is how it's going to be for you. And I said, well, if you insist. So I carried on. She also asked me to believe, I suppose, in God, in this invisible force that created everything. And I was a bit, I don't believe in God. That's rubbish. People that believe in God are mental. Ugh. So I said, I'm not going to believe in the God business. Well, you don't have to, but it really helps. I thought, nah, it's all rubbish, all this God stuff. Anyway, come about September, I had started to feel a bit better, and my heart was opening, and I was a bit nicer to people. And my kids said, oh, you don't shout as much anymore, and you know, you're more fun to be around. I thought, actually, things are changing. I can see something's happening. This is quite good. September time, I went on a 4-day silent retreat. So I thought, well, this will either be amazing or I'll go completely insane and they'll cart me off in a straitjacket and I'll never be seen again. I'll go one way or the other. During this silent retreat, I had, I suppose, what can you call it? I saw the light. I don't know what you'd call it, but I had a moment where it was as if, well, I suddenly thought, well, not only is God out there, but God is in me, because I suddenly felt like I had all the love in the universe in me. I thought, my God, I'm full of love. I must be glowing. Have I sprouted wings? Am I dead? Have I got a halo? What the hell is, because no one was speaking, so I couldn't run up to someone and go, I'm having this thing, I'm full of love, and it's just amazing, because they were all silent. Lots of people were crying, and I'm thinking, oh my God, I'm just like, this is wow. And it was as if the universe said, this is who you really are. This is what I am. And of course I'm going to look up. It just changed everything, because I suddenly, Marion had always said to me, all the love you ever need is inside you. And I thought, what the hell is she on about? And suddenly in that moment, I thought, it is. I am so full of love. I can't contain the love inside me. It was a pivotal moment, because if you realise that you're full of love, the inner critic's got nothing to say, because you say, well, you can say all you like. I'm love. I don't need you. And it was kind of struck dumb. And also, once you realise that you are love, you start to be kinder to yourself. You set boundaries. I would say no when I meant no, and I would be more possessive of my time and just nicer to myself. And I'm one of those people that never took a break, never goes on holiday, always working. And I started to slow down. I think, you know what? I deserve a break. Now, this has been going on since September, this process of me being nice to myself, changing the way I think, really. And it's incredible, because I sort of feel like I'm a new person. I've been reborn. Yes, some of my old anxieties and things are still there, but it's like I can sort of rise above them and think, do you know what? Yeah, I'm feeling a bit anxious. That's kind of an old story. It's okay. I'll let the anxiety pass through. And so those feelings don't rule me anymore. There's not an 8-year-old in the driving seat anymore. There is actually a 54-year-old in the driving seat, which is much better. It feels much nicer to know that I'm in control, rather than this 8-year-old me who was just screaming for attention, was running everything. So that's kind of where I am, Liz. Sorry, you haven't got a word in at all. I should go into silence now and let you speak.
Oh, I was listening to you, and your passion is just palpable. And when you were talking about Marion said to you that you're like a seed and you're growing, and you was like, you were filled with love and you didn't know what it was. And my brain immediately said, oh, that's a spiritual awakening, because that's my language for it. That moment where you just like, everything's going to be okay because I'm okay. And I've had those experiences too, and they are phenomenal. They are absolutely phenomenal. But here's the thing. You talked about where you were at the beginning and kind of where you've got to, but there must, and you talked about some of those moments where it was really difficult, where you thought, this is BS, it's not working, I've spent all this money, nothing's changing. What were the pivotal moments when you talked about the May time frame, I think it was, when you had that 6 hours silence? But how on earth, Sally, does someone as chatty as you go from talking to 6 hours worth of silence? How did that piece come about?
Do you know, Marion said, I've got this silent retreat, why don't you come? And I said, I can't, Marion. I can't stop talking. I'll go insane. I'll go mental. You probably regret ever asking me to come. And she said, she said, a lot of people find silence really useful. She persuaded me, and I thought, okay, I'll come. If I don't like it, I'll leave. So I turn up to this thing, and I think, oh, they're all a bit hippie, a bit weird. She's spraying essential oils around the place. There's angel candle holders. Yeah, oh God, it's all bonkers. So we start with the meditation, and then we go into silence, and I'm thinking, God, I've got a whole day of this. It's going to be awful. For 3 hours, my mind was like a greyhound on speed. It was like running around. Blah, 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 blah. A friend of mine had died sort of a few months prior to this, and I ended up having a conversation with him. I thought, I'm here talking to dead people now. This is bonkers. I'm here. I'm completely insane. I'm having a conversation with dead people. This is awful. And that was 3 hours of blah. And lunchtime came, and she said, well, if you get some fresh air, we're not talking over lunch. So I thought, I've got to get out. I've got to have some fresh air. So I took my sandwich and I went and sat in the graveyard. It was really quiet. It was very green, and I thought, oh, this is lovely, birds and greenery. And I had my lunch, and I came back to the centre, made a cup of tea. I sat in a chair, and that's when I suddenly, it was like this, it's like an egg yolk burst inside me, and this lovely feeling of calm. I was like, oh, it was like taking drugs. The only thing that comes close to it is when, as a student, I smoked a lot of pot. It was like I'd smoked a fantastic joint, and I was feeling really, really, I thought, I feel amazing. This is what that she was talking about, is this thing. That experience is what kept me going throughout the year, because there were lots of lows, and I kept thinking, no, that thing that I experienced during that 6 hour silence is in me. And even if I can't feel it, it's there somewhere. So I've got to keep going. So once I knew that sort of oasis of calm was inside of me somewhere, it didn't matter how shit things got, because I'd think, yeah, it feels really shit, and I'm anxious, and I'm this, and I'm scared. But do you know what? I know that lovely sort of vein of love is in me somewhere. So it kind of kept me going.
So were there some daily practices that you were doing? Were you trying to meditate, after that event, were you trying to meditate for 20, 30 minutes a day? What were you trying to do following that experience?
So Marion she kept asking us all sorts of things. There were mantras, and I hate mantras because I'd be like, I'm this, I'm that. And I think, oh, God, I feel like an actor, like trying to read a script that I don't actually believe in. So I said, I hate mantras, Marion. She said I was her worst client ever because I was so moany. Then we did something called morning pages, where you had to get up in the morning and for 20 minutes or half an hour, just write whatever came into your mind. That really annoyed me as well. And I did it for 30 days, and I just thought that was irritating. Then she said, meditate every day for at least 20 minutes. So I could try and do that. And then I found that really irritating. The only thing that really got me in touch with that lovely calm inside me was actually being outside on my own, close to nature. There was something about the natural world that was almost feeding me. And I also had a very strange experience about the June time. This is really bonkers, very bonkers. My sister had gone to a retreat in Portugal, and she said, I've had this experience. I met this bloke, and he does plant healing. And she said, I had this really weird thing, and I was fizzing, and this happened. And that sounds interesting. Give me his number. So I phoned him up, and he said, yes, I'm a plant healer. And I said, what do you do? Do you come around and wave a geranium in my face? No, he said. We're not even in the same room. I'm in Portugal. You're in your house. And I'm going to channel the spirit of a plant into you. And I said, well, how does that work if you're in Portugal and I'm in Kingston? And he said, well, it's like Wi-Fi. It's invisible. We're all connected. So I just thought, this sounds really potty. So one evening in June, I'm lying on the floor of my office. I've put the lights off, and I've got some sort of glowy light going. I said to my husband, don't come in. I'm meditating with the guy in Portugal. I mean, it sounded completely potty. So I'm lying on the floor. So this guy said, at 8 o'clock, I want you to play these 3 songs. There were 3 songs on a playlist he'd sent me, and I want you to relax. Now, fortunately, this happened at the end of a really stressful day, and I was so knackered. I just thought, I pressed play, and I lay there and I listened to the music. And I had it was like a David Lynch movie in my head, and it was all to do with nature. And I was in water, and there was this golden light bathing me, and it was the most incredible. And I came out of this thing, and I was like, my God, I've been on a trip. And this felt like my heart had been open, because I was just really, I can be quite a cold and cruel person. And I suddenly was really soft and warm and tender, and I was a better listener, and I didn't want to kill spiders anymore, which I'd always done. And something weird had happened. So that told me that there's something weird about this world, something going on that is invisible and I don't know about, but I can't deny its existence anymore, because it keeps coming up and saying, this is where I am, and it's powerful. And the people I thought were bonkers, they actually know something. And the people think they know everything, don't know anything at all. So it was like, by the middle of the year, my world was completely turned upside down. I thought, there is something in this spiritual stuff. There really is. And I mean, I now know there is. I can't deny it. It's impossible.
Do you know, Sally, I could just listen to you talk for England. You're so funny. You just make me laugh,
I do
my
talk
love.
for England, Lizzie. And Ireland and Australia and Germany and France.
Oh, I'm just when you're talking, I'm just so with you as you're on your journey, because I was incredibly cynical too, you know, and some aspects of spirituality. I am, you know, I have my moments when immediately my guard is up. It's like, this doesn't make sense. It's not logical. I don't understand how this works. But something has always got through my cracks. Do you know what I mean? That something's happened and a little chink of light has come through, and I'm like, oh, maybe there's something in this. You know, when I first got sober and I started working the 12-step program, I had so many moments that this was just BS. This isn't going to work for me. I'm going to drink again. How can this possibly be true? You know, I'm going to be one of the ones that relapses out of my cohort that I was in rehab with. But something just kept me going in those moments of doubt, in those moments of, this is BS, this isn't going to work. Because there were those slight moments of the light peeking through that just kept me going. And also, like you, I shared my cynicism. And I shared that this isn't working, you know, with my sponsor. I was like, this isn't working. I'm still full of rage. I'm still really unhappy. My husband's still really annoying me. Why isn't my life perfect anymore? You know, I got sober. Everything's supposed to be fabulous. Why do I still feel like shit? And she gave me the tools from the Big Book of AA to kind of help me navigate some of that. But one of the things I still struggle with is, you know, my self-critic can be really nasty, and I call it the negative committee in my head. You know that it's almost like we sat around a dining table and there's 5 different players and me. There's the negative Nelly, there's the who do you think you are, there's the bully, there's the Mr. AA saying, oh, we don't do that in AA, we do it like this. There's the, you know, the old or the boss, you know, of my business saying, oh, well, if I were the CEO or if I were you, I wouldn't do that. And all of these negative voices. And it's almost like there's a negative committee that I just have to tell them to shut up. But what I found really interesting was that you were saying it was about, you had that constant chatter for a long period of time, for 3 hours. And it was only when you went outside and came back did it stop. And I almost got the sense that you'd almost exhausted yourself with the chatter, that you know, it's like when you go in a really loud room, the noise is really loud. You know, that noise can sometimes be in our head, can't it? That horrible chatter, that it was only when you stopped and went outside and came back in again that something shifted. But I'm in awe of you, because I don't think I would have the patience to listen to my head for 3 hours. So, wow, I'm simply in awe.
I also think what I've realised is it's about surrendering, and I'm a person that doesn't find that easy. You know, my defences are down. I can do it all myself. Oh, I don't need any help. Yeah. And what I found was, in those moments where I've surrendered, where I've just been so exhausted, I'm going, oh, that's kind of where that comes in, that kind of spirit or light or whatever you want to call it, God. That's when it comes in, and I'm kind of learning now that, you know, I just have to let go and trust, and I find it really hard to trust. But when I do, it's when the magic happens. It's like I feel like I'm sort of cradled by this huge invisible hand. Do you know, it's always there. Whatever happens, it will always hold me.
I love that. And I have a similar phrase that I have to let go and let God, because part of my problem is that if I'm in charge of the show, you know, I literally try and orchestrate everything, and it's a complete disaster. And if I kind of sit back, let go, and have the faith that everything is going to be all right, 9 times out of 10 it is.
Yeah.
Because you know, you call it, I think you use the words being held. And I feel like that too, that sometimes I just have to let go so that I could be held. It's a bit like when you're a child and you're in the playground and you stand up straight, you put your arms out, your best mate's behind you, and you just fall backwards, and you have faith that they are going to catch you. And that's really easy to do when things are going well. I find letting go is really easy when everything's okay. The challenge is when life isn't okay, when things are tough, when, you know, family members are sick, when I'm sick. It's in those moments when my back's against the wall that I really need to kind of step into that faith and not pull away, because my default, like you, is barriers up, everything's okay, I'm okay, leave me alone, I'm the captain of the universe, I'm a capable woman, I'm a strong woman, I can do anything. But actually, isn't it ironic that it's when we surrender and when we say, effectively, I need help, I can't do this alone, that actually we're shown that it's going to be okay. And
Absolutely. Absolutely. I've also learned that when life is really tough, that's when there's something to learn. Those are when the lessons come. You know, when life's all lovely, it's great, but it's when the shit really hits the fan that I will have realised something, or I will learn something, or something incredible. I mean, my dad's dying of cancer at the moment, and it's horrendous. But there have been so many moments where, you know, I'm held, or a lovely nurse will appear just at the right time. So I've been learning so much through this process, which is the most difficult things I've ever been through. But it's where I'm really touching that invisible energy, God, or whatever you want to call it. It's really, really obvious that it's there right now that I'm really needing the help. Because I ask for it now. Sometimes I just say, I really need help. I can't cope with this.
yeah.
And help will come.
And God bless you, because I've been through not the exact, but a similar scenario, and and my experience was it was the worst possible time of my life. And I'm really pleased that you've got to the point where you're being held in this incredibly sad, painful, difficult time. And I'm not trying to put words into your mouth. Those are my words of my experience. God bless you, my lovely.
But you know what I do now that I never used to do? It's just treasuring. You know, the other day I was walking home from the shops, the sun was out, and I heard the birds. And it was just incredible. And I stood in the street looking at the birds like a nutcase. And I was just in some sort of reverie. And I thought, my God, life is amazing. And, you know, I never used to, I just trudge home and be all cross. Now I'm like listening to the birds. I'm smelling a daffodil. I think to my husband, oh, the daffodil's amazing. And he likes, like, what on earth is she on? So it's like, I see the beauty everywhere now, and it's always been there. I just couldn't see it. So that's what I'm getting. Yes, life's tough at the moment, but I'm also getting these moments of beauty that are just, you know, it's not about the money or the fast cars or the whatevers. It's smelling a daffodil. It's listening to the birds. It's the sun on your face. And it's lovely to be able to appreciate those moments, I think.
I'm so with you on that. I've just had my birthday, and my family said, what do you want for your birthday? And I said, I would like some bird feeders for the garden, please. And they're like, and my 15-year-old was like, oh, really? You want bird feeders? I mean, how sad's that? And you know what? Having those, we've now got a couple of spikes in the ground with bird feeders on them. And all of a sudden, we have been inundated with all of these birds. So many birds, and the only bird I can recognise is a robin. And I remember my dad used to love bird watching, And he had a pair of binoculars and a book about birds. And I remember looking at this book when I was a child, and I actually asked my mum if I could have it. So we found it in his study. And I've now got a bird book at my kitchen window. So I look out my kitchen window and I look at all these, I see these birds swoop in. And I'm like, oh, what's that? Is that a chaffinch? And it's so incredible just stopping, looking out the window and observing these birds, and it just fills my heart with joy. And when you were talking about stopping and looking at those birds and smelling the daffodils, it's those micro moments that whatever is going on, there's always joy around, isn't there? It's like I loved the film Love Actually. And, you know, I think it's at the outset when Hugh Grant's character said, he's doing the talking over the arrivals hall at Heathrow, and he's saying that love actually is all around us. And I can now see that it is. And it's in people, it's in things, it's in places, and it's in the most unexpected moments. If we take those blinkers off and seek it. And actually sometimes there's moments where I've found that it almost has to kind of punch me in the back, because I've had my blinkers on and I'm almost like shown by the universe or God or whatever it is that actually there is beauty in this world, and it is incredible. And it's so funny because we've come at having a spiritual awakening from completely different ends of the spectrum. You know, I came to mine through my alcoholism, and you've come to yours because of, you know, the feelings that you explained right at the outset and that conversation you had with your sister. But it's incredible, isn't it? It doesn't matter where we start, we can find that connection, we can find that love. And irrespective of our feelings on the woo, because some of what you were talking about, I was like, oh my God, that's so woo.
Yeah, it is totally woo.
Totally woo, especially the plant healer. I mean, my God, completely bonkers. However, I can completely understand why it was so powerful. Because if we let go of these kind of expectations of what life is supposed to be about, and just kind of be open to new situations, new circumstances, new experiences, it's incredible what we can be shown.
Absolutely, and life's just one big adventure now. I mean, I just feel totally different about life. I was quite a miserable person, and everyone used to think I was the life and the soul, but it was just a big mask. No, it's not. Now I actually feel like that. Now I'm actually really annoying. I'm the annoying happy person, like my spiritual mentor now.
Oh, God bless you. And have your friends noticed a change in you?
Do you know, the funny thing is, I haven't seen much of my friends. And I've started hanging around with different people, people that I've met through Marion, people that are on this journey who don't think I'm bonkers when I say, well, I was in my study having a plant healing, and they're like, oh yeah. So it's like, yeah, I'm keeping conscious company, if that makes sense.
Completely.
And I've used my dad as an excuse, like, oh, I'm really busy, I haven't had time to see people. But there's a certain person I feel more comfortable with now, who doesn't look at me askance when I tell them about, yeah, you know, I meditate for an hour every morning, I like smelling the daffodils. They go, oh yeah, great. So I've kind of changed the kind of people I mix with.
I did exactly the same. The minute I got sober, the people that I used to drink with, I did everything I could to keep myself safe and keep myself surrounded by like-minded fellows, as I call them. Because for me, there was so much change going on, and I couldn't understand it at the time. And I felt so very different. I couldn't articulate it. I just knew that I needed to surround myself with different people, and perhaps kind of pull away ever so gently from some of the people that weren't serving me. And I've had to do that, sadly, with some of my friendships as well. You know, they've not survived my sobriety for various reasons, because I've changed. You know, the person I was 20 years ago, or even, gosh, even 6, 5, 4, 3, 2 years ago, is not the person I am today. And there have been some casualties. But you know what? That's okay. You know, my number one priority today is to be sober, because without that, I have absolutely nothing. So in order to be sober, you know, my number one priority has to be me, has to be my relationship with the God of my own understanding. It has to be keeping myself safe in situations. And for example, I was doing an event for a client at the weekend, and it was in a posh London members club. And it was, of course, you know, it got to 4 o'clock. I'd organised cocktails, Prosecco, to be served. And of course, it was all a predominantly women-only event, very small, select group of women. And they're all like, Liz, have a glass of Prosecco, darling. And I'm like, no, darling, I'm a recovering alcoholic. Trust me, the last thing you want to give me is a glass of Prosecco, because I'll be shagging that waiter before you know it. And they're all like, oh my God, really? And I'm like, yeah, completely. Today I've lost the shame about what I need. Do you know what I mean? And, you know, my alcoholism kept me in shame for a long time, even in sobriety. And it's really interesting doing this podcast and talking to women like you and having completely bonkers conversations about just bonkers things. And, you know, today I know they're not bonkers, but for the Liz, you know, 5 years, 6 years ago, they were completely off the scale. And now I just find it joyous. You know, having the conversation we're having right now is just like, wow, aren't I blessed that you're sharing your story with me, and you're imparting your wisdom, and you're showing me the light. You know, I think God shines his light through people as well as through places and situations. And, you know, you've said some things in this conversation that I really need to hear right now. And, you know, I truly hope that our listeners have also experienced something through you sharing your experience that helps them. Because I do wonder if there's something to do with our ages. And you saying I think you said you were 52 when you started.
Yeah, and I'm 54 now. But what I found interesting is so Marion has a monthly meditation group, and I go along, and young women have started to come along, younger women in their 20s and 30s, and it's really great that they're coming along and they're on this journey and they're doing the journey process. So I've noticed change. I've noticed the younger women coming along. So I do think that I think basically there is an awakening going on, and I think it's all going to fall apart before we kind of wake up. And yes, I think, you know, it's taken me a long time to get to this point, 54 years, but there are women much, much younger than me. I mean, I met a 21-year-old at an event back in November. She was so wise. I was aghast. I'm like, you're 21. How do you know this? She knew stuff that's taken me decades to learn. She just knew it. The light was shining out. I mean, it was incredible. So there are young people out there with such, you know, an incredible light. So I think some of us, yeah, it takes a long haul. Maybe that's my journey. Maybe it had to take me 54 years. But there are some young people out there that are just in touch with God, or whatever you want to call it.
I completely agree. It's whenever I see a young person starting with their recovery, I just think, oh my God, you're so blessed. You're so blessed, because you don't have to go through all of the years of pain to get to get the light. And, you know, that's not discounting their pain at all, because pain is pain. I don't care what anyone says. It doesn't matter how long you're in it. Pain is pain. But I just think, what a blessing. And how blessed are they? Why, like you, I'm thinking, why did I have to wait until I was in my 40s to find this shit out? You know, where was I before? And actually, the truth of the matter is, where I was before is I was downing and, you know, literally knocking back Pinot and booze and knocking down all of those emotions and all of those feelings, and to put up those shutters so I didn't have to feel anything. But God, thank God it's not like that today.
But the person, I said I was talking to a dead person in my head at that first silent retreat. That was a friend of mine, a very dear friend, who died of alcoholism. So some people don't make it. Some people don't get to, so my poor friend John, he died on his own, tiny bit of his liver working, and they said if you keep on drinking, that's it, and he couldn't stop. And that breaks my heart that some people have to go through that pain and there isn't. So I just hope I know he's somewhere amazing. That was probably him in my head anyway, jabbering away. But, some people don't make it. And so I just feel lucky to be where I am now, to know what I know now.
Yeah, and hopefully he's talking to a couple of friends of mine who didn't make it either. Because that's the sad reality. Not everyone gets into recovery and stays in recovery. But I was lucky. I had the gift of desperation, and I choose to call that God. And I will do anything within my power to keep my side of the street clean, because the reality is I'm only ever an arm away from a drink. I could easily go to any number of shops and go buy a bottle, but today I choose not to. And I know that when I finish talking to you, I'm going to get in my car, I'll be home, I'll probably have a bath, chat with my family, and I'll put my head on the pillow, and that will be, yay, today I'm sober. So Sally, how can people, if people do need your PR services, or if they want to connect with you and find out more about your journey of falling together, where can they find you?
So if they want to read my blog, so I blogged about my year of spiritual mentoring, and I'm actually continuing to blog because I enjoy blogging. So my blog is at fallingtogether.blog. And then if you want to read about my PR services, that's at www.wowlpr.co.uk. And I'm at WOWl PR UK on Twitter, and I'm on Facebook too, and I'm on LinkedIn as Sally Brockway.
Fantastic. Well, Sally, we'll make sure all of those links are in the show notes so that people can find you. I cannot tell you how much I feel blessed to have had this conversation with you, and it's been a real honour and a privilege for you to share your story with me and our listeners. And thank you so much for coming on the show.
Oh, thank you. It's been lovely. It really has. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Today I Am Sober podcast. I hope you enjoyed it. I'd love your feedback. So come and find me on social media. All of the links are in the show notes. Until next time, bye.